than I am. So first, would you mind just sort of telling people how you and I met and how we got started working together, which feels like 3 years ago, but I think it was more like almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah, it's 15 years ago at least, yeah. It was the summer of 2006, and it was in Washington National Cathedral, as I recall, and I was involved as a composer with a project for the girls' choir there. And you were singing in a mixed choir that was also part of the same project, which was a sequence of motets centered around the life of the Virgin Mary, and with music by me and motets by Victoria. And this was all put together by our mutual friend and mentor, should I say, Malcolm Bruno, who introduced us. I think at that stage, the plans for the medieval footprints, I think it was the Christmas broadcast, were already in place. And you were looking for some repertoire, perhaps, to flesh out what you already had. Luckily for me, and perhaps also for you, I actually had something on offer, and you took it home and tried it out with your 3 friends in New York Polyphony, and you seemed to like it and recorded it, and we really basically stayed in touch. Well, I thought we hit it off. We had a good connection and similar backgrounds with a great love of Anglican church music and choral music in general, and lots of other stuff as well, which we don't need to go into here. But
yeah. Why don't you actually say a little bit about your background and how you came to Norway and sort of your life as a composer?
Yes, well, I grew up in just outside Liverpool in England, with parents who were regular churchgoers and a father who was an organist, a music teacher, and was looking for a more permanent position as an organist. And that appeared in Norway, where there is a lack of organists, that there aren't enough organists graduating to fill all the positions, especially in rural areas. And it's actually very attractive. Norway has a very good benefit system, strong economy and such. So my father looked into the possibilities and applied for a job, and we moved, and I carried on my schooling in Norway from the age of 14 and studied at the University of Oslo, music. And I followed in my father's footsteps for a long while as an organist at the English church in Oslo, where I was in charge of the weekly, the music for the weekly services, and in charge of the choir, which was great. And I really loved doing that. And I left the job a few years back. It became a bit incompatible with family life and my regular job at the music publishers, which I still have. And so that was sort of my musical background. But all this time I've been composing. It was a love I've had ever since I was trying to learn the piano and not really managing it very well, and found out that I was much happier doing theory, sitting with music theory papers, and I was slow at sight reading and rather preferred to invent my own stuff, which was great. And my piano teacher encouraged me, and so did my parents. And it sort of just developed from that as a hobby. And then I wrote some choral pieces, well, in the 90s, which actually got performed, and then I started to realise that I could maybe this was something I could actually do, and gradually I found out that I could even earn a few dollars, or whatever you call them over there, bucks, pennies, doing this. And so it became my hobby and my passion. Composing has always been my passion. It became a sort of a second job, my first love, but unfortunately not one I can live off full time. But I don't think there's ever been a period in my life since about the age of 7 when I haven't had a piece of music on the go, as it were. And it's all sorts of stuff, from liturgical choral music to a little bit of instrumental music. But I went through a long period of writing pop music with my brothers and playing that, and still dabble, improvise and enjoy very much doing that. And, but mostly, since I try and focus on stuff that I get paid for these days, so it's
the smart move.
Unnecessary when it turned out. But so it's mostly choral music, and I have a very good relationship with the cathedral here in Oslo, and I wrote some music for their midnight mass at Christmas, and have written a passion setting, a liturgical passion setting, which hopefully might be recorded in the course of this year. So it's, I feel. But one of my longest collaborations has been with you, Jeff, from New York Polyphony, and that's really opened doors for me over in the States, the connections and so that's something I really treasure. I'm really grateful for.
We do too. I think you've written something like 15 pieces for us now, maybe.
Yeah, it's
something around there.
Yeah.
And it's nice to come back to them every so often. It's rarely we sing a concert that doesn't have a piece of yours in it. But we've tried, sort of coined for you the label a neo-medievalist.
Yes.
And the sort of theme of the church musicians workshop next summer is marrying tradition and trend in the 21st century. Yes. So you maybe speak for a minute about how you're influenced by old and new, and how you bring those two worlds together through your composition.
Well, in the course of singing in choirs in Oslo, I began to sing Gregorian chants with a male voice ensemble at the cathedral, and that became a very interesting period of my musical discovery or musical development. And I've been singing plainsong or Gregorian chant, as we prefer to call it, for 20 odd years now, and it's not exactly anything particularly new to use Gregorian chant, to use that in compositions. I mean, it's from Palestrina onwards, or even earlier. I mean, Gregorian chant formed the basis of early sacreds, all early sacred polyphony. So it's very much the basis of liturgical music, but I think whereas my influence isn't necessarily always direct, it's more taking the aesthetical approach to marrying music and words, where the music is not necessarily in its own right, but to serve the words. And I have to admit that I'm not always conscious exactly of how I'm using the Gregorian chant, or how I'm using the medieval sensibilities or ideas. The process of writing music comes as a sort of amalgamation of ideas that occur through a bit of keyboard improvisation, singing, visiting texts. So often it's the words themselves that will speak, and I think it's basically just using the sum of the music I love and have heard so much of, and also perform myself, that sort of influences. I write the music I would like to hear myself. So because I love the freshness of the medieval music, which is unbound by functional harmony, by major and minor scales, by leading notes, etc. It's freer, and I take that freedom and interpret it in a modern sense. Probably not in a purist sense at all, but I just take the elements of it that appeal to me, that I feel work. So it's in a sense, I feel one of the things I'm trying to do is to reinterpret the old music in a modern harmonic setting, not in a modern musical setting, I should say, because it's not just necessarily harmonic. And I think I've never been aware of developing a personal style or anything. I think it's just something that grows when you, through experience, building a palette of tools, which are maybe chord progressions or colors, particular polyphonic devices, and I think as that palette grows and you revisit these colors, tools, etc., then that gradually develops into perhaps what becomes a recognizable signature in the music. So it's both a conscious and a subconscious situation, that this neo-medieval. It's in a way it's difficult to explain in detail. It's probably easier for somebody coming from the outside and looking in and saying, "Well, this is what it is."
Yes.
And
I wonder perhaps you could talk about the pieces you're writing for us for Church Music Workshop. You're writing a set of evening canticles for us.
That's right. Yes.
And an anthem. So yes. I wonder if you could talk a bit about how that's going and what your methods are and what we can look forward to when we see it.
Well, this is an instance where I've specifically wanted to combine the modern with the old and make it apparent how the two can interlock. So my method for this is, well, it's interesting as well, because obviously using the medieval music, the Gregorian chant, there were no organs around when this music was conceived. So now I'm writing something which is really three distinct elements. One is the Gregorian chants. Some of it is faux Gregorian, not necessarily original, but that's another one of the things that I will happily do is use the ideas and the melodic devices and motifs, and just totally without any respect for the composers who wrote these pieces originally. It's just turn them into something of my own, to suit my own purposes. So there's that aspect, the plain chant, the unison chant. Then there is the choral textures, of which will be simple, but they give the opportunity to add the modern flavor, add those harmonies that set off the Gregorian and complement it and contrast it. And then there's the organ accompaniment, which will bind these elements together. So it's, I think it's a good plan. It sounds good in theory. It's going to be difficult to bring it all together, I know, but I like a challenge, and I've never turned down a request or a commission to write a piece, even though I've felt that sometimes I've been in deep water. But this is something which I haven't actually seen done quite in this way before. there are hundreds, probably thousands, or there are hundreds of thousands of Magenunk settings out there, and it's the challenge is to come up with something which has an element of something new in it. So that was my idea, was to combine Latin with English, with the traditional English words, so that we get the Latin combined with the Gregorian chant and the English with the harmony, and see how these two can be combined. We're used to hearing them separately, independently, but now in this setting they'll actually be combined to a certain extent. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this, in the end, how it turns out.
Great, so are we.
And this is especially commissioned for the workshop. So I'm really looking forward to rehearsing it, and being another aspect of composing is that a composer doesn't often get to be part of the realization of his or her music. And this is something I'm really looking forward to, is actually being part of the learning process of the music and being part of the music making. That's why I envy all these jazz musicians who write their own stuff and can perform it themselves. But I sort of, yeah, so that's something to really look forward to.
We were just talking about, we've spent the last year and a half sort of being our own little choirs of one, which is, it's time for that to finish. So
yes,
it's really exciting to step out of that shell and explore this.
Yes.
So the last little bit I was going to talk about is we'll have individual tracks for folks to follow in the workshop, where if they would like to study some aspects of singing or liturgy or what am I missing? Organ. But there's the opportunity for those who want to come and sort of work on their composing chops with you. What are some of the things they might get to? What are some of their takeaways that they might have when they come next summer, 2022?
Well, I would very much like anybody who's interested in the course to submit some of their own work, so that we can look at that. And this isn't going to be a course which is so much about my own music. It's going to be about how the course members who are there can develop their own skills. And I have many years' experience of choral composing and singing, and look forward to addressing some of the issues, some of the challenges that arise when we're setting words to music, right from the process of finding appropriate texts to set, just how to plan a piece, whether it's music in a liturgical setting or whether it's a piece intended for a separate performance. I think at this stage a lot will depend on who comes to the course and what they themselves hope to get out of it. I think it's very much about establishing good dialogue between me and the course participants, and the course participants themselves, and that we I will put together a curriculum looking at how medieval music, Gregorian chant, has influenced contemporary music, and taking examples from other composers where this has been, in my view, successfully accomplished as a starting point, and then yeah, that will be our.
Hard to imagine a composer who is completely uninfluenced by somebody else, right?
Of course, yes. But I think there are composers who use Gregorian chant and medieval devices, medieval musical ideas more openly, more obviously than others. And I think, yeah.
One of the great things about being here at Nashotah, whether we're in our usual fall and spring terms, is that we're not just sort of meeting in classes and then going back to our homes every night. We meet for chapel every morning at 7:45, and then as soon as that's over, we head to breakfast together, and you have a different person that you have breakfast with, and then some time for coursework and some time for more midday prayer, and we'll have some rehearsal time built in for us to get together, and then we go back into classes, and then we have some time where we work together, and it's a good chance to not just sort of be in a classroom setting. It's very much the whole experience of having an opportunity perhaps to have a walk down to the lakefront and have just a quick chat about whatever is on your mind, whether it's what we're doing at that minute or what's coming up or what you've some of your successes and failures. At least that's true of our students when they have the chance to work here. So I'm over the moon excited to have you with us here in Wisconsin next summer, and I know everyone's going to enjoy your music and the opportunity to interact with you both from your teaching and from the music that you give us. So I'm just delighted to have you, Andrew, and I hope everyone can join us next summer for Church Music Workshop in 2022. Andrew, I'm going to stop can I stop the recording? I think I can stop the recording, yes.